I have no doubt if East Melbourne residents came to Town Hall in similar numbers demanding change to some council policy, there is no way they would be ignored in the way these residents have been ignored over the past year. It is inconceivable that this amount of resistance, this depth of rejection of council policy, this number of people clamouring to be heard would be ignored by this council if it came from almost any other quarter of the community. 1,000 Melburnians have asked council to cancel the CSO program. I cannot condone this budget which expands it instead. I note that 2 weeks ago, when we had a special meeting to receive verbal submissions on this budget, or rather the draft version of this budget, the Lord Mayor stressed that night that this is democracy. And yet there was a chorus of voices that night that appears to have fallen on deaf ears. The primary concern of submitters that night was the CSO program. And my primary concern with this budget is the expansion of the CSO program. I note that there were 52 survey responses supporting the program, but 966 Melburnians have signed a petition calling on us to end it. So I wonder if my colleagues have heard what the community is trying to say to us. There are red flags that ought to concern us, that ought to make us pause rather than barge ahead. We should heed the decision just weeks ago of the Queensland Supreme Court finding against Moreton Bay City Council. The judge in that case found that that council's compliance notices and its disposal of personal property were unreasonable, unnecessary and disproportionate. He found that moving a person on from one place to another is, quote, not reasonable or justifiable, and that forcing homeless people to move on does nothing to address the problem, and destroying belongings without following proper processes was unlawful. Our homeless strategy talks a lot about reducing stigma that surrounds unhoused people, but the CSO program does the opposite. It doesn't reduce fear and stigma, it heightens them. People sleeping rough have had no input into the program's design, delivery or evaluation. In fact, no one in the community has been consulted. This program was created and then repeatedly extended and now expanded without the usual community engagement processes, which ought to be standard for such a dramatic and expensive departure from usual council functions. If vulnerable people are treated as problems to remove instead of human beings to support, then we should expect continued resistance from the community. People are not going to stay silent while harm is being normalised in the name of public safety. At a time when Victoria Police has just doubled its foot patrols in the CBD, now is the time to end this trial and spend that money instead to do our utmost to solve homelessness.